Well, hey guys, I didn't do much prep for this, but hopefully it's not too scatterbrained. And when I think of this story, which I'm going to read right now, I just get lots of feels. And this is when you're reading what's called the Torah portions. You go through the same cycle every year. So you go through the first 5 books of the Bible every year, and you kind of look at each story a little deeper every time, and you start making some connections, connect the dot. And this verse was sent to me because for probably a couple of reasons. I think because it looks like there's a contradiction here, and also it's like, why is God just like losing his mind and telling people to kill other people, his people? Jesus says he's God, so where is the love, right? Where's the love? There'll be coffee drank throughout this whole thing, so I hope that doesn't bother you. All right, so Moses is a complete Jewish Bible. I like the wording in the Complete Jewish Bible. I'm still like a King James guy. I've just been like reading Complete Jewish Bible lately. I'm kind of like an all translation person. It's like I don't have a favorite translation. I think it's good to get well rounded by looking at different things. So Moses is coming down from outside. He's got the tablets, right? And he freaks out and breaks them because he sees the people worshiping the golden calf, which Aaron, the high priest, calls Yahweh, right? So Moses was gone long enough that they're starting to worry. And it's not like they forgot the God that brought them out of Egypt. They were just like, let's build, we need an intermediary. Moses was the intermediary between God and man, because God tried to speak to the people at one point. Like, don't ever do that again. Because his voice was just terrifying. It's like, even when Moses was on the mountain, he couldn't even see God's face because he would be destroyed. Right? So Moses is showing God's right hand, which is another cool thing. It's a game you play. It's like, how many times can you find Jesus in the Torah? It's like, it's everywhere. And you're going to see him here. You're going to see Jesus in this story. And you're like, what? But anyways, so what does he do? He, in verse 20, I think, so he grinds the golden calf down, right? And he melted it down, grinds it down to powder, and he scatters in the water, and he made the people drink it. So that's important, the little part there. And then the verse that was given, so Adonai, the God of Israel, says to each of you, put a sword on your side. He's talking to the Levites. Go up and down the camp, gate to gate, right? They're looking for something, right? There's a lot more than 3,000, Israelites here at the base of Mount Sinai. They're looking for something. What are they looking for? It doesn't say here, but we're given an idea with some other scriptures. So, kill his own kinsman, his own friend, his own neighbor, and the sons of Levi do what Moses said. And that day 3,000 of the people died. So Moses said, you consecrate yourselves today to Adonai, because every one of you has been against his own son, against his own kinsman, in order to bring a blessing on yourselves to stay. And that's kind of what the role of the Levites were, is this addressing the sin, with the tabernacle system, the temple system. And you think about things differently in this setting because God is literally, his presence is dwelling amongst them. When they're in the wilderness, their sandals don't wear out. There's some thought that like none of them actually died, and like things just didn't go bad. It talks about like the unleavened bread being in the tabernacle, just lasting forever, because things don't decay in God's presence. And in today, living in exile, we don't have that, right? So one of the blessings is that, and one of the curses is you can't mess up. And it's not because you gotta think about like it's affecting everyone else, and it's gonna not repel God's presence, but he has to withdraw, otherwise you'll get destroyed, just like Moses on the mountain. He couldn't see God's face. He couldn't be in the full presence of God like Adam was, unless he faced destruction. So we think about Jesus or Yeshua. He was an extension of God. He was the right hand of God. So that's one issue that people have, like Judaism is like Christianity is paganism, because there's multiple gods, right? There's only one God, and that's one problem with thinking about the Trinity that way. It's not like I'm denying the Trinity. It's just that I think about it slightly different. I think about it more simply. It's God has extensions of himself. It's like my hand is it's part of me. but it's something I use to complete my works. So you see the right hand of God working all throughout, even in Genesis. And then, it's a limited form of him. So it's not going to destroy us on the earth, which we know will happen. We know the earth will be destroyed and remade, and eventually God will be able to come back down without completely wiping us out. So that kind of premise is important to understand. So that way God is one. And he says, like, his breath, what the Hebrews would call the Ruach HaKodesh, is just an extension of him, the way he would interact with man, since he can no longer interact with us like he did in the garden. We're getting way off topic. I think that was important, though. Coffee. I think the contradiction here that some people said was the next day Moses said to the people, "You've committed a terrible sin." It wasn't the killing; it was just worshiping the golden calf. Let's just make that clear. It's the Bible written at a different time. Okay, so you gotta kind of careful how you read it in context, get the understanding. Okay, it wasn't the killing, the golden calf incident. Right? Killing was good. And we see that a few times, that the Levites cleansing impurities. Phineas was another dude who speared this guy, was sleeping with these Midianite women, and God's wrath was quenched because of that. Not telling people to go out and kill people today, but again, different time. God's presence was the big deciding factor there. If there was sin, it needed to be quenched right away. So this is connected to the bitter water. Right? He's grinding up this golden calf, and he's putting the water, making the people drink it. So remember I said they were looking for something. The Levites were looking for something, and they were going, man to man, from gate to gate. They're looking for what? So we have the story of the bitter water. So this is when a woman was accused of adultery. She would go to the priest, and he would have her drink bitter water. And if she was guilty, her abdomen would swell. I think her thighs would rot or something, and she'd probably be doubled over, and you would know that she was guilty. And if it didn't happen, then she wasn't guilty. So they would know that she was committed adultery if that's what happened there. It's just on Wikipedia. I don't know why I pulled this up and not actually looked up in the Bible, but that's in Numbers. If you want to look it up, Numbers 5. And then we have the connection to Jesus as well. Did I pull that up? John 19. He's on the cross, right? And he's offered, I think the Complete Jewish Bible says, it's, I think Complete Jewish Bible says like bad wine, or King James like vinegar. I've made wine before, it tasted like vinegar, so it's probably like the same idea there. Again, but cheap sour wine, bitter water. So he drinks this on the cross. Kind of gives you a different idea, like, please let this cup pass from me. Like the cup of the bitter water that the adulterous woman was made to drink. So Jesus was given this cup of bitter waters on the cross, and he drank. And then we read, after he died, one of the soldiers stabbed his side, and blood and water flowed out. So giving us an indication that his abdomen did swell with this fluid, showing that he had taken on the sin of the world. We are the adulterous bride. Israel is the adulterous bride, who went away. The whole idea of the prophets and everything tells you that Israel became divorced, not because God divorced us, because we divorced ourselves, and we needed to be redeemed. So he presented himself, as a bridegroom. And the only way, the great mystery that Paul talks about in Colossians is all about Jesus redeeming the bride. So how he did that was, in Jewish culture, you couldn't remarry after a divorce. The only way the woman would be freed, remember, with the bride, is if the husband died. So he did. He died, and then he resurrected to present a new bridegroom. And I don't know why it's just not taught in the church today. It's such a beautiful thing. It's just, once you understand just a tiny bit of the Old Testament, these things become so much clearer, and you see the beauty in these things, and a cup of bitter water being connected to this story. And I think somebody made the connection that some 3,000 were saved right after this time, mirroring the 3,000 that died. That is the great redemption there. And Judaism tends to miss this because they were expecting a final redemption through Jesus. And we know that's coming later. And we understand that Jesus was like Joseph. He was the suffering servant in Egypt, which is an idiom for the world. And then he comes back as King David to finally bring Israel back into the promised land for the millennial reign, when he'll live there until the earth heals and pretty much the Garden of Eden state is returned, where God can come down and be the temple. So it's complete. It starts with the Garden of Eden in Genesis, and then Revelation reveals how the garden will return, and God will be able to dwell amongst his people again. So that takes a few things to get there. And the story of the bitter water is just beautiful because it's a picture of Jesus. Right? It shows that, even though, so we think about coming back to the adultery, these people called the golden calf, and this is probably the important part that I kind of skimmed over, called the golden calf Yahweh. Called them. And we do that today in the church. We're worshiping things that are not God, but calling it the God of the Bible. Now, some of us are purposefully doing this, and some of us have committed adultery, and some of us have not. Because it's still a sin, no matter whether you're conscious of it or not. There's people who have really rebelled. And when the people left Egypt, it was a mixed multitude. Let's read you something here. This is from, where is that? This is from my book that I just finished. This is the preface, which talks about the kingdom of darkness. And there's one part, I'll just read it, about the people leaving Egypt and the Pharaoh there. And this is important to understand, who is Israel. And it's another thing that the church tries to confuse us on, is that we think Israel messed up. God got mad at them, and now it's the church's time, right? But it was always Israel. Just as the garden was always the plan, Israel was always God's people. He doesn't have multiple separate groups of people with different plans of redemption, right? It's only dying on the cross one time for one people, and anyone could have joined Israel this time. That's kind of the point here. So let me just read this quickly. So the Pharaoh that commanded the killing of the newborn Hebrews was said to have not known Joseph. So what leader would not remember the man that saved a nation and was second in command? Would not his sons Ephraim and Manasseh have become leaders as well? And what kind of narrative would explain this? So I often see Mitzrayim, or Egypt, as a melting pot and a picture of the world. So when we are told to come out of Egypt, we are called to come out of the world. So the Pharaoh at the time of Moses' birth has been speculated to be a conquering king, a man called the Assyrian, who had taken over the nation. So this narrative tends to explain a few things, such as a mixed multitude leaving Egypt to escape persecution, and why the Hebrew children were slain out of fear. Somewhere along the line, these Christians became obsessed with bloodline Jews, but we see many joining Israel. We cannot think of the nation of Israel as one of Yahweh's failed side projects. He just has a continually evolving plan of redemption for them, because everything has to do with saving Israel, which is his bride. So this is mirrored by the evolution of Babylon, the kingdom of darkness, which is this whole 10-page of things is going on, is the whole idea that the devil has a kingdom of darkness. That's like the one world empire. Probably pre-flood, all the people were united. We see that again with the Tower of Babel under Nimrod, one world altogether. So God confuses the language, everyone gets split. But this king Nimrod kind of creates Assyria and Babylon, comes down. The story of Abraham and Lot. He was actually, there's 2 wars there. One before that story, where the people of Canaan kind of rebelled, where the promised land was, and they were free for 13 years. So it was a one world empire. They broke free, and then Amraphel, which I think is here, comes down, and with his other kings, one of them, Chedorlaomer and Amraphel being Nimrod. Nimrod has probably lots of names, and he shows up in different mythologies, because if he was the king at the time of Babel, and there were 70 different languages, there would be 70 different names for Nimrod. So maybe Gilgamesh was one, could that, and that's why all this stuff appears in so many mythologies, and so many different religions all kind of have this same working story. Anyways, they come back down, try to reclaim Canaan, and the cities of Sodom, and Lot gets taken. So Abraham and 318 dudes take on, I think the book of Jasher says 80,000, the armies of 4 kings, and they say kill them all. Only the 4 kings got away. So that makes like the 300 Spartans look like Boy Scouts, right? So the story is pretty powerful. So you think, after the Syrians rebuilt their forces to kind of take over the world again, and probably were successful with Egypt, I think they remembered Abraham and his Hebrews. Yeah, that's why they're afraid of him. That's why 318 did this, so they got to keep the population low, right? That's what they're afraid of. So he didn't remember Joseph. Because Joseph would have probably remained a ruler. He was very beloved by the Egyptians. It wasn't a crazy, expansive time. They weren't 400 years in Egypt, but you're not going to forget that much 400 years. And you'd remember him as a leader. He would be in the histories. He'd be like a president. Forgetting a president today. All right. So lots of people joined Israel when they left during the Exodus. And that happened during Passover. And one of the things that is custom on the Passover Seder is bitter herbs, right? You eat the bitter herbs with the Passover lamb. And we know that Jesus was the Passover lamb. And the bitter cup there as well. So very connected. And then it is commonly thought that the next feast day, which is Shavuot, took place when they got to Mount Sinai and received the 2 tablets. And that's why they hold up the 2 hollow loaves during Shavuot. Just to remember that the tablets and the law being given. And we call that Pentecost as Christians. Penta is 50, so it's 50 days after the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is when Jesus ascended to heaven, and the Spirit came down. And the Spirit is kind of brings discernment. The Ruach HaKodesh. It would have come on people during the Old Testament, and that's my thinking. Is it comes upon people in their times of need, and that's something that happened at Shavuot. That's why the apostles were gathered after Jesus left to celebrate the Jewish feast. All the apostles were Jews and kept Judaism, and Judaism speaks of the Messiah to come, so it's all built in there. It's not like anything was done away with. So everyone quotes, "He came to fulfill the law." But then right below that it says, if a jot or a tittle is removed from this law, then not good for you. It won't be removed, or the law is eternal. So that's why the Torah is so special, is because it is not done away with. It's perfect, and it's unlike the rest of the Bible. It's almost like God's instruction handbook. The rest is like people living it out or messing it up. And like the book of Deuteronomy, which is the 5th book, the last book of the Torah, is quoted from by Jesus and Paul, probably more than any other book in the New Testament. So a lot of important things are being found. So understanding the context of the Torah is going to help you. So let's recap that. Just go back to the story. Exodus 32. So these Levites probably found these guys who drank the bitter water. They were adulterous men, women, children who were used to worshiping gods in that way. Remember the mixed multitude in Egypt, used to worshiping God in that fashion. These idols, and God says, don't worship me like the pagan gods. You worship me this way, very specifically this way. That's what the whole Torah is about. This is how you love me. This is what righteousness is. And that's what's confusing for people today, is righteousness is subjective and you make it up in morality. It's about what you feel in your heart. The people that really did commit adultery, they were probably swollen in their abdomen, and the Levites knew exactly who to kill. And that's why only 3,000 were killed. It's not just a killing at random. And it's pretty clear once you understand the context. And it doesn't make sense any other way. So digging a little deeper, there's probably even way more to this than I've even delved into here. It's just kind of surface level, and we've already gone past through this in the Torah portion so far this year. We're into Deuteronomy now, so winding it down. Deuteronomy's a good book. It's kind of like Moses' recap of everything that happens. So he comes back to a lot of stories. I don't believe he comes back to this one though. So that's all I got there. But hopefully that was helpful. I'm encouraging you to dig a little deeper on these stories and surely get some context, especially historical context. That's something that's helped me, is understand the history surrounding an event. It just helps me put it in a box so I can understand it. Otherwise, it's hard. And there's a lot of history in Genesis alone, so just reading through again the history. I'm not saying read a bunch of extra biblical texts, but I do definitely like extra biblical texts, like the book of Jasher. I don't know if it's scripture, but it just gives you a lot of ideas to think about. It talks about all these stories. It goes off on these little bunny trails that make you think a little differently. Just give you a little different perspective. And a lot of things just make a whole lot more sense after reading that book. Alright, but yeah, I think if we had the Torah alone, it would be pretty good, because you see Jesus everywhere, like just this little bit, right? Very powerful. Cup of bitterness, let this cup pass from me. And just connecting that to Him, it's an easy connection. I don't think it's a mental leap to do that. No mental gymnastics required here. It's just plain and simple. Just, the Redeemer and the Bride, all right there. We're sinners, and this connection that we've lost to God needs to be restored. And even Moses tells them, people in Deuteronomy, that you'll betray and you'll go away and you'll be brought into captivity, but you're going to be redeemed. You're going to be brought back to the land. And that redemption's just a little slower than I think Jews were expecting. Right? There's that final redemption we're waiting on, to be brought back into the land. So Jesus resurrected. He's not done yet. He's up in heaven. He's running the temple system right now, since we don't have it on earth. And then he's going to come down, and he's going to come with a sword this time. So the King of Peace, and he's going to come in the sword to finally redeem his people that are scattered amongst the nations. And the purpose of that was to bring the Torah to the world, to bring the gospel to the world, the gospel of Messiah, which is very clear in the Torah. If you read it, it's Messiah is everywhere, that he will come to redeem. So when I say the Torah spread, it's not just reading the gospel, it's everything together. Right? Jesus says, my gospel, what do you think he was talking about? The New Testament wasn't written, the gospel was the Torah and the Tanakh. It was the promise of redemption. Right? He wasn't talking about books that weren't written yet, right? He was still early in his ministry, and he said, the gospel, my gospel. We know him to be the Word. The Word of God is the Bible, so the Torah is part of that. So Jesus is the Word. Yeah, I'm going to stop rambling there. I'm studying the divorce of Israel. Maybe I'll link that below, Hosea and the divorce. That might give you some more context. And once I get this done, like I said, it'll be in my book, but I'm going to put it on my, what do you call it? Put it on what my word blogging site is. I can't remember the name, but it will be there. Whatever that is, it will be there. WordPress. Be on my WordPress, which I will link below. I'll take it. Needs more editing. Not done yet. Alright.